Metal pipes groaned above Alex River's head as he crawled through the maintenance tunnel, his wrench slipping from sweaty palms for the third time in 10 minutes. The 16-year-old human had been working on Crimson Point Station for 8 months now, and still felt like an outsider among the dozens of alien species that called this place home. His supervisor, a gruff Nethys named Whisk, had sent him to repair a coolant leak in Sector 7, the worst part of the station where only the lowest maintenance jobs ended up. Alex didn't mind, though. It kept him away from the main corridors where aliens would stare at him like he was some kind of exotic pet. The leak was worse than expected, spraying bright blue coolant across the narrow tunnel walls. Alex cursed under his breath as he tried to reach the damaged pipe joint, his human frame barely fitting in spaces designed for smaller alien workers. His knees scraped against rough metal as he twisted the wrench, finally feeling the pipe connection tighten. A deep rumble echoed through the tunnel as heavy footsteps approached from the main corridor. Alex's heart sank. He recognized that sound. Only the Brule made footsteps that heavy, their massive frames weighing nearly 3 times what a human did. He hoped whoever it was would just pass by without noticing the maintenance hatch. "What do we have here?" a booming voice called out in broken Standard Galactic. Alex froze as the footsteps stopped directly above his tunnel entrance. Through the grating, he could see 3 pairs of boots, expensive ones with military markings. These weren't ordinary Brule, they were enforcers. Alex had heard stories about Brule enforcers, and none of them ended well for humans. "Come out, little meatbag," another voice laughed. "We know you're in there." Alex had no choice. He crawled backwards through the tunnel, his tool belt clanking against the walls, and emerged through the hatch into the main corridor. 3 massive Brule towered over him, their gray-green skin marked with ritual scars that indicated high military rank. The largest one, wearing a commander's insignia, stepped forward. His name tag read, Thrix, and his yellow eyes gleamed with cruel amusement. "Look what crawled out of the walls," he said to his companions. "A human maintenance worm." The other 2 Brule, Grok and Ven, according to their tags, circled around Alex like predators. Grok was missing his left tusk, probably from some battle, while Ven had intricate tattoos covering his thick neck. Both looked like they enjoyed hurting smaller creatures. "I'm just doing my job, sir," Alex said quietly, keeping his eyes down. He had learned early on that direct eye contact with Brule was considered a challenge. "I'll get out of your way," Thrix laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Your way? This is our way, human. Your kind doesn't belong here." He gestured around the corridor with one massive arm. "This station was built by superior beings, not crawling insects like you." Alex tried to step around them, but Ven blocked his path. "Where are you going so fast, worm?" Ven grabbed Alex's shoulder with one huge hand, his claws digging through the fabric of Alex's work uniform. "The commander was talking to you." "Your species is pathetic," Thrix continued, clearly enjoying himself. "Weak bones, fragile skin, no natural weapons." He flexed his own claws, each one as long as Alex's thumb. "How did you even make it to the stars with such inferior biology?" Grok snorted with laughter. "Probably begged some real species to give them rides." Alex's face burned with humiliation, but he kept quiet. Fighting back would only make things worse. Humans had a reputation to maintain on the station. They couldn't afford to be seen as troublemakers. There were only 12 humans working on Crimson Point, and they all depended on keeping their jobs. "Look at it," Thrix said, poking Alex in the chest with one thick finger. "Soft everywhere, no armor, no natural defenses." He pressed harder, forcing Alex to stumble backward. "I bet I could break every bone in its body with one hand." "Please," Alex said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I need to get back to work." The 3 Brule burst into laughter. "It says please," Ven howled, "like a trained pet." Thrix's expression suddenly turned cold. "That's the problem with your kind, human. You always think you can just walk away." His voice dropped to a dangerous growl. "But sometimes the galaxy needs to remind you of your place." Before Alex could react, Thrix's massive hand swung across his face with casual force. The blow sent Alex flying sideways into a sharp metal beam that jutted out from the wall. Pain exploded across his cheek as he hit the beam. feeling skin tear and warm blood begin to flow. Alex collapsed to the deck, his vision blurring from the impact. The metallic taste of blood filled his mouth as more droplets fell from the gash on his face. Through his dazed hearing, he could hear the three Brule laughing again. "Oops," Thrix said mockingly. "Did I use too much force? I forgot how fragile you meatbags are." Blood continued to drip from Alex's wound, forming small puddles on the deck. Some of it splashed onto a biosensor panel built into the wall, standard equipment on all station levels to monitor for biological contamination. The sensors were designed to detect any organic matter and analyze it for potential threats. At first, nothing happened. The Brule continued their taunting, making jokes about human weakness and fragility. But then a soft beeping sound came from the sensor panel. The beeping grew faster, then turned into a steady tone, then became an urgent alarm. All three Brule stopped laughing and looked at the sensor panel. Its display screen was flashing bright red with warnings in multiple alien languages. The alarm grew louder, joined by similar sounds from other sensor panels throughout the corridor. "What's that noise?" Ven asked nervously. More alarms joined the chorus, as Alex's blood continued to activate sensors wherever it had splashed. Emergency lights began flashing in the corridor, bathing everything in pulsing red illumination. The station's central computer started broadcasting automated warnings about biological contamination in Sector 7. Thrix stared at the blood pooling beneath Alex, his expression shifting from amusement to confusion. "That's impossible," he muttered. "It's just human blood." Alex himself was too dazed to understand what was happening. He could hear the alarms getting louder, spreading throughout the station like a wave. Footsteps echoed in nearby corridors as security teams began responding to the emergency, but something else was happening too. The pain from his wound was fading, replaced by a strange tingling sensation. Alex could feel his heartbeat getting stronger, his vision becoming clearer. The blood flow from his cut was slowing, as if his body was healing faster than it should. "We need to get out of here," Grok said urgently as more alarms joined the cacophony. But Thrix stood frozen, staring at Alex with growing alarm. "Look at it," he whispered. "Look at the human." Alex pushed himself up from the deck, surprised by how steady he felt despite the blow. The gash on his face had already stopped bleeding, leaving only a thin red line. He looked up at the three Brule towering over him, but for the first time they didn't seem quite as intimidating. All around them, the station's biosensors continued their frantic warnings, as if they had detected something that shouldn't exist, something that violated the known laws of biology, something hidden in the blood of a seemingly ordinary human teenager. The corridor filled with the sound of running footsteps as security teams converged on their location. Emergency protocols activated throughout the station as Crimson Point's computer systems struggled to identify the source of the biological anomaly. And in the center of it all, Alex River stood up slowly, wiping blood from his face, completely, unaware that his life and the fate of the entire galaxy had just changed forever. Emergency klaxons wailed through every level of Crimson Point as Dr. Pearl raced through the corridors toward Sector 7, her forearms clutching various scanning devices. The Nethys scientist had never heard biocontamination alarms this intense, not even during the Rigel plague outbreak 3 years ago. Her telepathic senses picked up waves of confusion and panic from other station residents as she pushed past groups of aliens huddled in doorways. Security teams in full hazmat gear jogged past her, their equipment readings showing impossible biological signatures that made no sense. "Status report," she called to her assistant, a young court named Lise, whose crystalline body flickered with nervous energy. "All biosensors in Sector 7 are reporting critical anomalies," Lise replied, his voice chiming like broken glass. "The contamination appears to be spreading, but the computer cannot identify the source organism Dr. Pearl's primary heart skipped." A beat. In her 40 years as a xenobiologist, she had cataloged thousands of species and their biological markers. If the station's advanced scanners couldn't identify something, it was either completely new to science or something that shouldn't exist. They reached the corridor where the emergency had started, and Dr. Pearl stopped dead in her tracks, 3 Brule. Enforcers stood against one wall, looking unusually subdued for their species. In the center of the corridor sat a human teenager on a medical gurney, being examined by 2 medics who looked completely baffled. "You're telling me this started with
him?"
Dr. Pearl asked the security chief, a massive Brule named Torx. Torx nodded reluctantly. Commander Thrix struck the human during an altercation. When the boy's blood hit the biosensors, everything went crazy. Dr. Pearl approached the gurney carefully, her scanners already picking up readings that made her secondary brain hurt. The human looked perfectly normal. Pale skin, brown hair, typical bone structure for his species. But her instruments were detecting energy patterns that violated several laws of biology. "What's your name, young one?" she asked gently. "Alex, River," the teenager replied, his voice steady despite everything happening around him. "I work in maintenance." "Alex, I need to run some tests on your blood sample. Would that be acceptable?" Dr. Pearl had learned to be polite with humans. Their emotions were more fragile than most species. Alex nodded, then winced as something seemed to shift behind his eyes. "I feel strange, Dr. Pearl. Like something's waking up inside me." That phrase sent chills through Dr. Pearl's telepathic receptors. She had heard similar descriptions in ancient Nethys legends about the Founders, the mysterious race that had supposedly seeded the galaxy with life millions of years ago. But those were just stories, weren't they? Her first scan of Alex's blood sample nearly made her drop the scanner. The genetic markers were rewriting themselves in real time, unlocking dormant sequences that appeared to have been deliberately compressed. It was like watching evolution happen at fast-forward speed. "Get Captain Stone down here immediately," she ordered Torx. "The human liaison needs to see this." Meanwhile, Alex was experiencing changes he couldn't understand. Colors seemed brighter, sounds clearer. He could hear conversations happening 3 corridors away. When one of the medics spoke in Brule dialect, Alex found himself understanding every word, despite never learning the language. "This is impossible," the medic was saying, to his partner. "The human's cellular regeneration rate has increased by 300% in the last hour." Captain Roderick Stone arrived 20 minutes later, his weathered face grim. The 60-year-old human had served as the liaison between Earth and the Galactic community for 15 years, and Dr. Pearl had never seen him look this worried. "How bad is it?" Stone asked quietly. "Bad doesn't begin to describe it," Dr. Pearl replied. "This young man's DNA is undergoing systematic restructuring. Sequences that were inactive are becoming dominant, and I'm detecting energy signatures that shouldn't be possible in organic matter." Stone closed his eyes. "I was afraid this day would come." "You knew this could happen?" Dr. Pearl's telepathic abilities caught the edge of Stone's thoughts. Fear mixed with anticipation. "Earth's government has been monitoring anomalous developments in our off-world population for the past 5 years, Stone admitted. "Some humans in deep space have been showing enhanced abilities, but nothing like this." He looked at Alex, who was now sitting up straight and alert despite his recent injury. "We've been calling them awakened, humans who seem to be accessing genetic potential that was previously dormant." Alex heard every word, even though they were speaking quietly across the room. That should have been impossible given the distance and ambient noise, but somehow his hearing had become impossibly acute. He could also sense the electromagnetic fields from the station's power grid, feel the vibrations of the massive rotating sections, even detect the minute gravitational variations caused by ships docking at the outer pylons. "There's something else," Dr. Pearl said, checking her readings again. "The genetic sequences I'm seeing match theoretical models for the founder species." Stone went pale. "That's classified information. How do you know about Project Genesis?" "I don't know about any project," Dr. Pearl replied. "I'm talking about archaeological genetic samples we discovered on Rimworld Epsilon, ancient DNA fragments that appeared to be artificially created rather than naturally evolved." Alex stood up from the gurney, surprising everyone. He felt stronger than he ever had, like energy was flowing through every cell in his body. The cut on his face had healed completely, leaving no scar. When he looked at the biosensor panel that had started the whole crisis, he could somehow understand its internal workings just by focusing on it. "I can hear your thoughts," he said to Dr. Pearl, who took a step backward. "Not words exactly, but emotions and intentions. You're fascinated, but also terrified." Stone grabbed his communicator. "Emergency transmission to Earth Command. Authorization Stone Alpha 7. We have a code Genesis situation on Crimson Point." He paused. "Repeat. We have confirmed genetic awakening with full manifestation." Around them, more station alarms began, sounding as other systems detected the unprecedented biological readings. Ships in the outer docking bays reported instrument malfunctions. Several alien species complained of sudden headaches or sensory disruptions. "It's spreading," Liss observed, his crystalline form flickering more rapidly. "Whatever's happening to the human is affecting the entire station's biosystems." Alex could feel it too. His presence was somehow interacting with every living thing on the station. Plants were growing faster in the hydroponics bays. The bacterial cultures in the science labs were evolving at accelerated rates. Even the station's bio-neural computer networks were being influenced by whatever he was becoming. "Captain Stone," Dr. Pearl said urgently, "I'm detecting similar energy signatures from other locations throughout the galaxy. This awakening isn't isolated to just this young man." Stone's face grew even more grim. Beth Wong on Haven's Rest, Paul Grant on the cargo hauler Far Horizon, dozens of others. He looked at Alex with a mixture of pride and fear. "Son, you need to understand something. You're not just changing, you're becoming what humanity was always meant to be." "What do you mean?" Alex asked, though part of him already knew the answer. Memories that weren't his own were surfacing in his mind. Images of vast cities among the stars. Technologies beyond current understanding. An ancient civilization that had chosen to hide itself in the genetic code of primitive humans. Millions of years ago, an advanced race called the Founders decided their children, all the species they had created, were becoming too dependent on their gifts, Stone explained. So they encoded themselves into human DNA as a failsafe, waiting for the right conditions to trigger a new evolutionary phase. Dr. Pearl's scanners suddenly went wild. "Captain, I'm detecting multiple ships approaching the station. Brule Empire, Nethys Collective Court Assembly. Every major power in the sector is sending representatives." Through the station's communication arrays, emergency messages were flooding in from across the galaxy. Reports of humans displaying impossible abilities, of genetic codes rewriting themselves, of an entire species beginning to awaken to its true potential. Alex felt the weight of destiny settling on his shoulders. Whatever was happening to him was just the beginning. The scared teenager who had been crawled through maintenance tunnels that morning was gone. In his place stood something new, something that would either save the galaxy or reshape it completely. And somewhere in the depths of space, alien governments were already making plans to ensure that whatever humanity was becoming would never reach its full potential. 3 days of continuous analysis had pushed Dr. Pearl to the edge of exhaustion, but what she had discovered would change everything known about galactic history. Her laboratory now looked like a war zone, filled with exotic scanning equipment, genetic sequencers, and holographic displays showing impossible biological data. Alex sat in the center of it all, connected to monitoring devices that tracked his ongoing transformation. His appearance hadn't changed much, but the readings told a different story. His brain activity had increased by 400%, his cellular regeneration was operating at superhuman levels, and his DNA was continuing to rewrite itself with mathematical precision. "Show me again," Captain Stone said wearily, his third cup of coffee growing cold as he studied the genetic analysis reports. Dr. Pearl activated the holographic display, filling the air with swirling double helix structures. "This is Alex's original human DNA from 3 days ago," she said, highlighting sections in blue. "Basic Homo sapiens genetic structure, completely normal for his species." The display shifted, showing the same genetic structure but with vast sections now glowing bright gold. "This is his current genetic profile," Dr. Pearl continued. Notice how previously inactive sequences have become dominant, and new genetic information has literally grown from dormant segments. Stone leaned forward. But where did that new genetic information come from? DNA can't just create itself from nothing. That's exactly what I thought, Dr. Pearl replied, manipulating the display to show microscopic details. But look at this. The new sequences aren't random. They follow incredibly complex mathematical patterns that suggest deliberate design. She paused. This isn't natural evolution, Captain. This is artificial genetic engineering on a scale we've never seen before. Alex watched the display with growing understanding. Memories that didn't belong to him were becoming clearer each hour. Images of beings that looked human, but possessed abilities that seemed godlike. Technologies that could reshape matter with thought alone. Civilizations that spanned entire star clusters. I remember them, Alex said quietly. The Founders. They weren't just another alien race. They were us. They were what humanity was before. Dr. Pearl's telepathic receptors caught fragments of Alex's emerging memories. What she sensed made her primary heart race. Alex, try to focus on those memories. What can you tell us about the Founders? Alex closed his eyes, letting the inherited memories surface. They created most of the intelligent species in this galaxy. The Brule, the Nethys, even your people, Dr. Pearl. He opened his eyes, and for a moment they seemed to glow with inner light. But they made a mistake. What kind of mistake? Stone asked. Their creations became dependent on them for everything. Technology, guidance, even basic problem solving. Alex's voice carried echoes of ancient sadness. The galaxy was stagnating because nobody learned to grow beyond their limitations. Every species just waited for the Founders to solve their problems. The holographic display shifted as Dr. Pearl accessed her archaeological databases. Wait, she said excitedly. I'm comparing Alex's current genetic markers with those ancient DNA fragments from Rimworld Epsilon. The display showed two genetic profiles side by side. They're identical, Stone stared at the evidence. You're saying the Founders didn't just disappear, they became human? Not exactly, Alex replied, his understanding growing clearer. They encoded their consciousness, their knowledge, their very essence into the genetic structure of primitive humans on Earth. Then they used advanced technology to lock those abilities away until humanity developed enough to handle them. Dr. Pearl was frantically cross-referencing data. The energy signatures I detected during your awakening match theoretical models for consciousness transfer. But that level of technology is beyond anything we thought possible. What was supposed to trigger the awakening? Stone asked. Alex stood, up easily disconnecting the monitoring equipment with superhuman dexterity. Reaching the stars was just the first step. The real trigger was supposed to be contact with hostile alien forces. He looked at both of them seriously. Humanity needed to face genuine threats to survival before the genetic locks would open. The altercation with Thrix, Dr. Pearl realized. When you were struck and your blood was exposed to the station's exotic energy fields, it created the perfect conditions for genetic activation. Stone's communicator buzzed with an urgent message. His face grew pale as he read it. Alex, we have a problem. Ships from the Brule Empire, Nethys Collective, and Court Assembly are all demanding your immediate transfer to their custody for scientific study. Through the station's communication systems, Alex could sense the growing tension. Alien governments were terrified of what humanity was becoming. Their entire galactic order was built on the assumption that humans were the weakest species, useful only for basic labor and trade. They're planning something, Alex said, his enhanced senses picking up encrypted military communications. Ambassador Krex of the Brule Empire is coordinating a joint response. They're calling it Operation Containment. Dr. Pearl's equipment suddenly detected massive energy fluctuations from Alex's direction. Your abilities are still developing, she observed. I'm reading neural patterns that suggest you're accessing quantum-level information processing. Alex nodded. I can interface with any technology now just by touching it. He placed his hand on one of the laboratory computers and his consciousness expanded into its data networks. Within seconds, he had accessed classified files from across the galaxy. "Dr. Pearl, they're not just planning to study me." "What do you mean?" Stone asked urgently. "Operation Containment isn't about research," Alex replied, his voice carrying new authority. "They're planning to eliminate all awakening humans before the transformation can spread." He accessed more classified databases. There are already strike teams being deployed to human colonies throughout the sector. The implications hit both Dr. Pearl and Captain Stone simultaneously. If the alien governments could suppress humanity's awakening, they could maintain their dominant position in the galaxy. But if humanity reached its full potential, their civilizations would become obsolete overnight. "There's more," Alex continued, his consciousness expanding through the station's networks. "The founders didn't just leave their legacy in human DNA, they planted genetic time bombs in every species they created. The awakening of humanity is supposed to trigger evolution in all intelligent life." Dr. Pearl's scanners suddenly detected similar energy patterns from other parts of the station. "It's already starting," she breathed. "I'm reading genetic fluctuations in several alien crew members. Their own dormant founder sequences are beginning to activate." Stone grabbed his emergency communicator. "This is Captain Stone to all human personnel on Crimson Point. Implement Protocol Genesis immediately." He looked at Alex grimly. "Son, if what you're saying is true, we're about to face the fight of our lives." Alex stood up, and both Dr. Pearl and Captain Stone could see that he was no longer quite human. His movements were too fluid, his awareness too complete. When he spoke, his voice carried harmonics that seemed to resonate with reality itself. "The galaxy is about to change," Alex said. "The founders designed this moment to force every species to evolve or be left behind." He looked toward the viewport showing the vast expanse of space. "But some civilizations will fight to prevent that change, even if it means destroying everything they claim to protect." Through the station's sensors, he could detect the approaching alien fleets, hundreds of ships carrying weapons designed to eliminate any threat to the existing galactic order. They had no idea they were about to face an enemy that could rewrite the laws of biology itself. "Dr. Pearl," Alex said calmly, "I need you to prepare emergency broadcasts to every human settlement in this sector. They need to know what's coming." "What should I tell them?" she asked. Alex smiled, and for a moment his expression carried the wisdom of an entire ancient civilization. "Tell them it's time to remember who we really are." Outside Crimson Point, the first alien war fleets dropped out of hyperspace, their weapons charging for what they believed would be a simple extermination mission. They had no way of knowing that their target was becoming something their own ancestors once worshipped as gods. Plasma fire erupted through the corridor as Brule assassins moved through Crimson Point like deadly shadows. Their orders simple: eliminate the human known as Alex River before his transformation could spread to others. What they didn't expect was for their target to be waiting for them in the station's central hub. Completely unafraid, Alex stood calmly in the middle of the wide corridor as 6 elite Brule warriors approached from 3 directions, their weapons charged and ready. Behind them came Quart crystal guards whose bodies could slice through steel, and Nethys mind warriors capable of driving lesser beings insane with pure thought. "Surrender now, abomination," called the lead assassin, a scarred Brule named Vrak, whose reputation for brutality was known throughout the sector. "You will come with us for processing." Alex smiled sadly. "I know what processing means, Vrak. I've accessed your mission files." He gestured toward the approaching aliens. "You're here to dissect me, study my genetic structure, then eliminate any other humans showing signs of awakening." The first plasma bolt came from Alex's left, fired by an eager young Brule who couldn't wait for orders. The superheated energy that should have vaporized human flesh instead struck some kind of invisible barrier around Alex's body. The plasma dispersed harmlessly, its energy absorbed and converted into something else entirely. "Impossible," breathed one of the court guards, his crystalline form flickering with confusion. Alex held up his hand, examining it with genuine curiosity. My body adapted to the plasma's frequency in real time, he explained. The founder genetic programming includes rapid evolution in response to immediate threats. He looked at the assembled assassins. Would you like to try again? Vrak snarled and opened fire with a heavy plasma cannon, its beam capable of melting through starship armor. The other Brule joined in, filling the corridor with enough destructive energy to level a building. But Alex simply stood there, letting the plasma wash over him like warm sunlight. When the weapons finally overheated and stopped firing, Alex remained unharmed. His clothes were gone, vaporized by the initial assault, but his skin showed no damage. If anything, he seemed to glow with absorbed energy. My turn, Alex said gently. He didn't move physically, but suddenly every weapon in the corridor began to malfunction. Plasma rifles sparked and died. Crystal blade projectors shattered. Even the Nethys mind warriors found their telepathic abilities blocked by some kind of neural interference they couldn't understand. How? Vrak demanded, staring at his useless weapon. I can interface with any technology through quantum entanglement, Alex explained as if teaching a class. Your weapons are just sophisticated tools. Once I understand their operating principles, I can control or disable them. One of the Nethys warriors attempted a direct mental attack, trying to overwhelm Alex's mind with psychic force. Instead of resisting, Alex opened his consciousness and let the alien probe deeper. The Nethys screamed as he encountered not one human mind but the combined knowledge of an entire ancient civilization. Get out of my head, the Nethys shrieked, clutching his skull as information flooded his consciousness. I'm not in your head, Alex replied calmly. You're in mine. And what you're experiencing is just a tiny fraction of what the founders knew. The remaining assassins tried to retreat, but found the corridor exit sealed by the station's own security systems. Alex had taken control of Crimson Point's central computer with a thought, turning the entire structure into an extension of his will. Please, Vrak said, his warrior's pride cracking under the impossibility of his situation. We were just following orders. Alex nodded sympathetically. I know. You were told that humanity represented a threat to galactic stability. He gestured around them. But what if I showed you that the real threat is the refusal to grow beyond your current limitations? Before any of the aliens could respond, Alex reached out with his enhanced consciousness and touched each of their minds, not to harm or control, but to share. For just a moment, each assassin experienced what it felt like to think with the full potential of their species' original design. Brule warriors saw themselves as they could be, still strong and proud but also capable of art, philosophy, and deep emotional connection. The court guards experienced individual creativity alongside their logical perfection. The Nethys felt the joy of personal achievement balanced with collective wisdom. When the vision ended, all 6 assassins stood in stunned silence. That's what the founders intended, Alex explained. Not replacement or domination, but evolution. Every species in this galaxy carries dormant genetic sequences that could unlock their true potential. Vrak dropped his weapon completely. The Empire would never accept such changes. Our strength comes from our warrior nature. Your strength comes from your unity and courage, Alex corrected. The warrior nature was supposed to be just one aspect of your complete selves. The founders never intended any species to be limited to a single defining trait. Meanwhile, throughout Crimson Point, similar confrontations were taking place. Captain Stone had activated all human personnel, and they were using their growing abilities to protect themselves and others. Beth Wong's voice came over the emergency channels from Haven's Rest colony, reporting successful defense against Nethys attack fleets. Paul Grant transmitted from the cargo vessel Far Horizon, describing how his crew had taken control of pursuing Brule warships simply by interfacing with their computer systems. But the most shocking reports came from the alien crew members on various stations. Dr. Pearl's predictions were proving accurate as non-human species began experiencing their own genetic awakenings. Brule engineers were developing artistic sensibilities. Quart scientists were experiencing emotions. Nethys individuals were learning to value personal privacy alongside collective thought. It's spreading faster than we calculated, Dr. Pearl reported over the comm system. The awakening is triggering cascade reactions throughout the galactic population. Alex could sense it happening across vast distances. Millions of beings throughout the sector were beginning to evolve beyond their species' traditional limitations. Some welcomed the changes, embracing new aspects of themselves they had never imagined. Others fought against the transformation, terrified of losing their familiar identities. This is why they're so afraid, Alex realized, speaking to the subdued assassins around him. Your governments know that if this awakening spreads to enough beings, their current power structures will become obsolete. Vrak looked up from where he sat on the corridor floor. What happens to us now? Alex considered the question carefully. That depends on what you choose to do next. He gestured toward the comm panel. You can contact your commanders and tell them the human threat has been eliminated. Buy us time to prepare for what's coming. And if we refuse? Asked one of the court guards. Then you'll watch as your civilizations tear themselves apart trying. To prevent an evolution that's already begun, Alex replied. The choice has always been growth or stagnation. The founders just made sure that eventually, every species would have to decide. Through the station's sensors, Alex detected more alien fleets approaching. These weren't assassination teams or research vessels. These were full military armadas, carrying weapons designed to sterilize entire star systems. The galactic powers had decided that if they couldn't control humanity's awakening, they would destroy every human settlement in space. Captain Stone, Alex called over the comm. How long until our people on Earth are ready? Stone's voice was grim. Earth Command estimates another 72 hours before they can implement planetary defense protocols. We need to buy them time. Alex looked at the former assassins around him. Well, are you going to help us save the galaxy or watch it burn? Vrak stood up slowly, his massive frame carrying new dignity. What do you need us to do? Outside Crimson, Point. The largest military fleet in galactic history prepared to eliminate what they saw as an infection threatening the established order. They had no idea that their target was no longer just one human teenager, but a growing network of evolved beings who could rewrite the rules of warfare itself. War came to the galaxy like a thunderclap as coalition fleets struck simultaneously at 17 human settlements across 3 sectors, their weapons designed to eliminate entire populations before any defense could be mounted. What they encountered instead changed the nature of warfare forever. Alex felt each attack as if it were happening to his own body, his consciousness now linked to every awakening human throughout space. On Haven's rest colony, Beth Wong faced a Nethys mind fleet with her own evolved telepathic abilities. On the cargo vessel Far Horizon, Paul Grant and his crew were single-handedly disabling Brule dreadnoughts by rewriting their computer systems through quantum interface. But the most devastating battle was happening on Crimson Point itself, where the Coalition had sent their most powerful weapons, reality-warping quartz crystalline bombers capable of unmaking matter at the molecular level. Incoming bombardment, Captain Stone reported from the command center. 12 quartz vessels, full crystal matrix configuration. His voice carried resignation. Alex, even with your abilities, those weapons can unmake anything they target. Alex stood in the station's central observatory, no longer entirely human in appearance. His consciousness had expanded beyond his physical form, creating multiple bodies from converted matter to handle different tasks simultaneously. One version coordinated defenses with the reformed assassins. Another interfaced with the station's quantum computers. A third prepared for direct combat. Let them come, Alex said through all his forms at once. It's time they learned what the founders were truly capable of. The first crystal bombardment struck Crimson Point's outer hull with force that should have disintegrated the entire structure. Instead, the station's hull began to shift and flow, like liquid metal, adapting its molecular composition in real time to absorb and redirect the destructive energy. Alex had converted the entire station into an extension of his own enhanced biology. Impossible, transmitted the Court Fleet commander. Our weapons are unmaking the target, but it continues to exist. Because I'm not just defending against your attack, Alex replied, his voice broadcasting across all coalition frequencies. I'm learning from it. The second bombardment came from 3 directions simultaneously, enough destructive force to crack a planet's crust. But Alex was ready. He had grown additional bodies throughout the station, each one interfacing with different defensive systems. When the crystal weapon struck, the energy was absorbed, analyzed, and then reflected back at the attacking ships with improvements. 3 quart vessels simply ceased to exist. Their own weapons turned against them with mathematical precision. The remaining ships fell back in confusion, their commanders unable to comprehend how their reality-warping technology had been not just countered, but enhanced. All coalition forces, this is Admiral Krex of the Brule Empire, came the emergency. Transmission. Implement protocol final solution. Eliminate all human settlements regardless of civilian casualties. Across the galaxy, the true scope of the coalition's plan became clear. They weren't just trying to stop the awakening humans. They were attempting genocide on a scale never before seen. Entire star systems with human populations were targeted for complete sterilization. But humanity was no longer defenseless. On Earth itself, Dr. Sarah Kim reported that nearly half the planet's population was showing signs of genetic awakening. Enhanced humans were taking control of orbital defense platforms, upgrading them with technology that shouldn't have been possible for centuries. The home system is secure, came her transmission. We've got founder-level defenses online. Any fleet that approaches Earth will face weapons that can rewrite space-time itself. Alex felt pride swell through his expanded consciousness. Humanity wasn't just surviving. They were becoming what they were always meant to be. But the galaxy was paying a terrible price for the resistance of its established powers. Dr. Pearl, Alex called to the Nethys scientist who had chosen to stay and help. Are you detecting the cascade reactions we predicted? Her voice was filled with wonder and concern. Yes, but it's happening faster than our models suggested. Entire alien populations are experiencing forced evolution as their dormant founder. Sequences activate. Some are embracing it, but others. Through his quantum interface with galactic communication networks, Alex could see the chaos spreading. On Brule worlds, warrior castes were developing artistic sensibilities and questioning centuries of military doctrine. Nethys collective minds were fracturing as individuals demanded personal privacy. Court logic councils were paralyzed by members experiencing emotions for the first time. Their governments are losing control, Captain Stone observed. Some alien populations are welcoming the changes, but the ruling classes are fighting to maintain the old order. This was always the risk, Alex admitted. The founders knew that forced evolution could be traumatic, but they also knew that gradual change would never be enough to break the stagnation that was killing the galaxy. On the main display, more coalition fleets were approaching, but these ships were different. Their energy signatures showed internal conflicts. Alex realized that many of the crews were experiencing their own genetic awakenings and questioning their orders. Coalition Fleet 7 Alpha. This is Alex River, he transmitted directly to the approaching armada. I know many of you are feeling changes you don't understand. You don't have to fight against your own evolution. The response came from multiple sources within the fleet. Individual ship commanders were breaking ranks, their crews no longer willing to participate in genocide. A Brule captain named Torvin announced his ship's defection. A Quart science vessel reported that its entire crew had voted to study the awakening rather than fight it, but Admiral Krex remained determined. All loyal forces maintain formation. The infection must be contained. He led the remaining ships in a final assault on Crimson Point, bringing weapons that could destabilize local space-time. But as his fleet closed in, something unprecedented happened. Alex divided his consciousness, one final time, creating a version of himself within each attacking ship. Hello, Admiral, Alex said, appearing on Krex's bridge as a projection of pure thought. I'd like to show you something. Before Krex could react, Alex shared a vision with every being in the Coalition fleet. They saw the galaxy as the founders had intended it. Dozens of species working together, each contributing their unique gifts. to build something greater than any single civilization could achieve. Brutal strength supporting Nethys wisdom, court logic balancing with genuine emotion, human adaptability bridging gaps between different ways of thinking. This is what we're fighting for, Alex explained. Not human dominance, but galactic unity. The awakening isn't meant to replace your species. It's meant to complete them. Some ships immediately ceased fire. Their crews had seen the vision and understood. Others continued their attack, their commanders too committed to the old ways to accept change. But Alex was no longer the same being who had crawled through maintenance tunnels just days before. When the final assault came, Alex met it not with defensive measures but with transformation. He reached out through quantum space and touched the consciousness of every sentient being in the attacking fleet. Not to control or harm them, but to offer them a choice: evolve or remain trapped in their limitations. The battle ended not with explosions or destruction, but with understanding. Ships that had come to destroy Crimson Point instead became part of a growing network of evolved beings working together. Admiral Krex himself, his warrior's pride transformed into genuine wisdom, became one of Alex's most dedicated allies. The war is over, Alex announced to the galaxy, but the real work is just beginning. Throughout space, the awakening continued. Entire civilizations were choosing growth over stagnation. But some remote systems still resisted, their governments promising to fight the human plague to the last being. Alex could sense them out there in the darkness. Fleets gathering in secret, weapons being prepared, plans being made for one final attempt to stop evolution itself. The galaxy had chosen its path, but not every part of it was ready to walk forward into an uncertain future. 6 months after the awakening began, Alex stood before the newly formed Galactic Assembly on Unity Station, a structure that grew and adapted like a living organism while housing representatives from hundreds of evolved species. The old, rigid hierarchies had given way to something unprecedented, a truly cooperative galactic civilization. The transformation had not been easy or painless. Entire governments had collapsed as their populations evolved beyond the need for authoritarian control. Ancient species rivalries had crumbled when former enemies discovered they shared common ground through their unlocked potential. But from the chaos had emerged something beautiful: diversity united by understanding rather than conformity. The awakening statistics are encouraging, reported Dr. Pearl, now serving as the Assembly's chief evolution coordinator, her own Nethys. Abilities had expanded to include individual creativity alongside collective wisdom. 87% of known intelligent species have experienced some level of genetic activation. Most are adapting well to their enhanced capabilities. Alex nodded, though his attention was divided across multiple bodies throughout the galaxy. One version was helping establish new colonies where evolved beings could explore their potential. Another was mediating disputes between species still adjusting to their changes. A third was deep in research, working with founder archives that had awakened along with their genetic descendants. What about the resistance movements? Asked Admiral Krex, whose own transformation from brutal enforcer to wise protector had become a symbol of hope throughout the sector. His new role as head of galactic security allowed him to channel his warrior instincts into protecting the vulnerable rather than oppressing them, diminishing but still present. Alex replied, "The Outer Rim Coalition continues to reject evolution, and they're gathering forces for what their leaders call the final purification." His expression grew serious. They've allied with some of the more extreme factions from each species, those who would rather destroy the galaxy than see it change. Captain Stone, now serving as Earth's primary representative, leaned forward in his chair. How much of a threat do they represent? Alex considered the question carefully. His enhanced consciousness could monitor thousands of star systems simultaneously, tracking ship movements and communication patterns across vast distances. Militarily, they're still dangerous. They've concentrated their remaining forces around the Magellan Nebula, and they're building weapons designed specifically to counter evolved abilities. But that's not our biggest concern, added Beth Wong, participating via quantum link from her new position coordinating human settlements. The real challenge is what we do with our abilities. Power without wisdom has always been dangerous, regardless of species. This was the truth that kept Alex awake during his brief rest periods. The awakening had given evolved beings capabilities that approached godhood: matter manipulation, consciousness transfer, reality alteration through quantum interface. Some were using these gifts to heal planets and cure diseases. Others were getting drunk on their own power. The founders faced the same dilemma, Alex said, accessing memories that felt both ancient and immediate. They realized that ultimate power without corresponding wisdom would lead to tyranny. That's why they designed the awakening to be gradual, rather than instantaneous. Through Unity Station's bio-neural networks, he shared images from the founder, archives, civilizations that had transcended physical limitations only to become cruel gods ruling over lesser beings. Species that had achieved immortality, but lost their capacity for growth. Entire galactic clusters reduced to playgrounds for beings who had forgotten what it meant to struggle and learn. "So we make sure that doesn't happen to us," said Commander Thrix, who now served as Alex's personal security chief. The Brule's transformation had been dramatic. His capacity for violence remained, but it was now balanced by deep empathy and philosophical understanding. "We remember what it was like to be limited, vulnerable, dependent on others." Alex smiled at his former tormentor, feeling genuine affection for the being who had inadvertently triggered everything. "Exactly. The pain of growth is what keeps us humble. The memory of weakness is what keeps us compassionate." Across the assembly chamber, representatives from dozens of species nodded in agreement. Court delegates whose crystalline forms now pulsed with emotional colors. Nethys individuals who had learned to value personal thoughts alongside collective wisdom. Brule, whose artistic creations complemented their warrior traditions. And hundreds of other species, each exploring new aspects of their nature, while maintaining what made them unique. "We have a proposal from the research division," Dr. Pearl announced. "Analysis of the founder archive suggests there are other galaxies, facing similar evolutionary crossroads. Some are preparing for their own awakenings. Others are trapped in stagnation cycles that could last millions of years." Alex felt his consciousness expand further as he considered the implications. The transformation of their galaxy was just the beginning. Throughout the universe, civilizations were struggling with the same choice between growth and stagnation. Some would find their own path to transcendence. Others might need guidance. "The Magellanic Clouds have been sending reconnaissance probes," Captain Stone reported. "Their governments are trying to determine if our awakening represents a threat to their own established orders." "Of course they are," Alex said with understanding rather than judgment. "From their perspective, we must look like a contagion that could destroy everything they've built." He stood up, his form flickering between human and something more transcendent. "The question is, do we wait for them to attack or do we reach out in friendship?" The debate that followed reflected the new nature of galactic governance. Instead of military leaders making unilateral decisions, the discussion involved philosophers, artists, scientists, and ordinary citizens from every awakened species. Decisions were made not through force or manipulation, but through genuine consensus based on shared understanding. "I vote we send peaceful delegations," said a young court, whose emotional spectrum had unlocked artistic abilities beyond anything her species had previously imagined. "If other galaxies are facing the same stagnation we overcame, maybe we can help them find their own path to growth. But we need to be prepared for rejection," warned a Brule admiral whose strategic thinking had been enhanced by newfound intuitive abilities. "Some civilizations might prefer destruction to transformation." Alex listened to the debate with part of his attention, while using the rest to monitor the growing tension at the galaxy's edge. The Outer Rim Coalition was massing ships and weapons, preparing for what they saw as a battle for the soul of galactic civilization. Their leaders still believed they could force the universe back to its previous state of predictable limitation. "We'll send the peaceful delegations," Alex finally decided. "But we'll also prepare for conflict. The Founders' archives contain defensive technologies that could protect entire star clusters if necessary. He looked around the chamber at beings who had once been enemies working together as partners. The awakening has given us incredible power, but our greatest strength is still what we've always had: the ability to adapt, to grow, to become more than we were. As the assembly session ended, Alex felt a familiar presence touch his consciousness. Dr. Sarah Kim was transmitting from Earth, where the awakening had transformed the entire planet into something approaching paradise. Disease had been eliminated. Aging had become optional. Humanity was exploring forms of existence that previous generations would have considered impossible. Alex, she said, her voice carrying across quantum space. The deep space monitoring stations are detecting something unusual. Signals from beyond the local group. It looks like other galaxies are beginning their own awakenings. Alex smiled, feeling the endless possibility of an evolving universe. The transformation that had begun with a teenager being struck by an alien bully was spreading beyond their galaxy, reaching toward distant star clusters where other civilizations were taking their first tentative steps toward transcendence. Then, our work is just beginning, he replied. The founders planted seeds throughout the universe. Now it's time to help them grow. Above Unity Station, the stars themselves seemed brighter, as if the universe was awakening along with its children. The galaxy that had once been divided by fear and prejudice was becoming something new. A community of evolved beings exploring the infinite possibilities of consciousness itself, and in the depths of space, other worlds were beginning to hear whispers of change, carried on cosmic winds that spoke of transformation, growth, and the endless potential of life to become more than it had ever dreamed possible.